Welcome to Live with the Guy, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we cover pop culture, politics, and production. I got my producer, Nat, over here.
Hello.
Well, before we get into the first story, which I think is going to be Adam Sandler and Happy Gilmore 2, you want to talk about what we did yesterday? We had the day off.
Well, we didn't have the day off. We were editing and working. Don't make it seem like we were on holiday, but we did escape to go try some donuts.
Yeah, we've been trapped in the house because we have we were having three shows Monday through Friday. So now we're down to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we can edit on those other days. But we tried a new donut shop here in Mexico City, and it was phenomenal. Now, the donuts were great, but the coffee was something to still be desired, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you've been on the search for a good donut here in Mexico, which I tell you, it's not our main food, so it's not going to be as good as in Canada or the US, but you liked those.
Well, yeah, it's called Austin Donuts. So if you're ever in Mexico City, try out Austin Donuts. I think it's a chain from the US though, but man, when you go into the donut shop, it didn't feel like a chain.
No, it's not a chain.
Oh, it's not
I
a chain.
think they're trying to copy a chain from the US, but it's not. It's in La Narvarte, in case anybody here speaks Spanish.
Yeah, it's all specialty donuts. So they had donuts that I had never seen. The dough for the donut was absolutely phenomenal. I'm a big donut and pizza fan, and here in Mexico City, it's really hard to find good donuts and good pizza.
But we have found good pizza as well. It's not your style, but...
Not my style.
And Rafa says, good morning. Did you enjoy the donuts?
Oh, we did. Ask him if he's ever been to Austin Donuts.
I don't know if he lives in Mexico City, so I don't know.
Okay.
But
if he ever comes to Mexico City, try Austin Donuts. Really good. The coffee is not the best.
No.
I got a high standard for coffee, though. And there is a lot of good coffee shops here in Mexico is the thing.
Yeah, and we might continue on our search for donuts.
And
maybe we can turn it into a series if we ever muster up the strength.
Yeah, it was a small little donut. Like, it was extremely highly rated on Google Maps. That's why we kind of chose that one. The pictures look great, but when we pulled up to the donut shop, I was like, oh, it's this little shop that I was like, oh, it doesn't look like it did in the pictures. I don't know if this is going to be any good. But then we sat down and tried the donuts, and they were phenomenal.
And Rafa says, I thought you were going to Tim Hortons.
We were supposed to.
Yeah, we are going to make a video about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into Adam Sandler. Then again, Tim Hortons. I've already tried the Tim Hortons here in Mexico, and I did want a really good donut.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're definitely going to try another one next week.
Those are just mostly mass-produced. They feel even more mass-produced here in Mexico than in the U.S., Canada, Tim Hortons, for some reason.
Yeah, they at Tim Hortons, they use what's called a pre-bake. So they pre-bake everything, then ship it out to the store, and then they do the final bake at the store, which is just for a couple minutes, kind of just to heat it up. So they keep the same standard worldwide. Also, a Brazilian company bought out Tim Hortons a few years ago, and the standard's really gone down. But here in Mexico, I think Tim Hortons is more of a specialty international brand. And in Canada, it's more of a budget-friendly grab-and-go brand. So it's interesting that it's two different models within Canada and the rest of the world.
And Rafa also says, no, I live in the state that looks like a dog. That would be San Luis Potosí.
You know right away what it is.
I hope. But okay, from Variety, Adam Sandler's Happy Gilmore 2 debuts to 46.7 million views, biggest Netflix US film opening ever.
Yeah, and good for Adam Sandler. I really like the move of Netflix picking up Adam Sandler. He is perfect for streaming. They cut a deal with him, a multi-film deal, not just to act, but to produce and direct, and that's been going very well. He's done movies like Uncut Gems, Hustle, which are more dramatic roles for him rather than comedy. But now he's back into comedy, which is good to see. When you put an Adam Sandler film into, I say on the big screen, it doesn't necessarily always work. They're typically more low budget. And you're competing with extremely big films, so it can be hit or miss when you put it into a theatrical release. But on Netflix, it's going to hit every time. Just having Adam Sandler in the movie is going to get eyes on the movie for streaming. I really like this, and I think he's going to continue to have success on Netflix. What do you think about Adam Sandler?
Yes, well, I haven't seen a movie of his recently at all. I never watched the very serious ones.
Oh, you never seen Uncut Gems?
No.
Uncut Gems is phenomenal, and so is the movie Hustle, where he plays a basketball coach. both those movies are really something completely different than what you seen Adam Sandler in. So if you haven't seen those two movies, I think those are actually Adam Sandler's best two movies. But something like this is kind of a cash cow for Netflix, an Adam Sandler comedy. I'm actually surprised it got such high ratings of 46.7 million, being the highest viewed Netflix movie of all time for its debut.
Do you want me to read into it?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did put it on the cover, so we do definitely need to read a little bit into it.
Happy Gilmore is back on top. Adam Sandler's long gestating sequel, Happy Gilmore 2, teed off with big viewership numbers, ranking at number 1 on the Netflix list of top 10 English language movies. Happy Gilmore 2 launched on the streamer on July 25th. For the week of July 21st through 27th, the film generated 46.7 million views over 3 days, with views defined as total hours watched divided by total runtime. That makes this start the biggest US opening weekend of all time for a Netflix film, as well as the best ever for one of Sandler's movies. He has starred in nearly a dozen original movies for Netflix, including Ending Mystery, Hubby Halloween, and The Week Of.
Hubby Halloween. I never heard of it, but that being said, I am really good. Netflix is starting to come out with their actual numbers, their opening weekend streaming numbers, things like this. Streaming services typically hadn't come out with numbers, so it was hard to know if it was a success or failure. It would also be interesting to see if they can connect new viewership or new subscribers to those numbers to see how successful a movie like that is. And that's dealing with the dog. We're about to go into the next story, though. If she can get back into her production seat, that would be nice.
Sorry.
Okay. And the next story is going to be as TV collapses. Spotify.
From Variety, Spotify boosts subscriber count to 276 million in Q2, misses revenue target, and swings to net loss.
Yeah, and I actually put the story in because of Nat. Before I even seen the story, she was like, did you know with our YouTube subscription, we get YouTube music? And I knew YouTube had music, but I wasn't too sure. And then I looked at it, I was like, oh, wow, this is really great. And if you've never tried YouTube subscription.
Premium.
YouTube Premium. It basically takes out all the ads. And I watch a ton of YouTube for research purposes and other things. So man, I can't go back now that I have a YouTube subscription. And now that the fact that they're adding YouTube music in there for free is absolutely phenomenal. This is a way for them to really start dominating other markets other than just basic YouTube, is through these YouTube subscriptions, putting YouTube music in there, or even putting, YouTube had they still do have, what is it called? YouTube Red?
Well, that's what YouTube Premium used to be before, and then they changed the name to Premium.
Yeah, it kind of failed out. They were trying to go into a Netflix model, but I think they can retry that if they go into very specific niche markets, dominate those niche markets. And as they fill out each niche market, at the end, they will have dominated the Netflix space. What do I mean by that? Content creators on YouTube are basically making really high-end documentary content already to kind of go to those creators, offer to promote them within YouTube, and have them make specialty documentaries to fill out the documentary space and really kind of dominate documentaries, then go into the genre of kids, and then kind of expand out from there. That would be the best and safest way to kind of dig into the YouTube market.
Well, YouTube does have movie rentals and TV show rentals, so it's a little bit more similar to what would be like Apple TV. And there's also YouTube TV, which I haven't really heard much about because in Canada and in Mexico, I don't think it's available. So it's a US only thing for now, at least. But with YouTube music, I didn't know. For the longest time, I used Spotify, and then I stopped paying for it because my other car in Canada wouldn't connect. And that's the only time I would really listen to music. And now I mostly just listen to news, podcasts, etc. on YouTube as well. But I kind of forgot that music existed. And now that we got another car, to calm the dog when she's in the car, I did need some sort of way to use music. And I just looked into it and I saw that it was included, which I don't know if it was always included and I just ignored it or if they changed it. But if you don't have YouTube Premium and you have the ability to get YouTube Premium and you do watch quite a bit of YouTube, that's one of the best things you can do.
Well,
if you can afford it.
I would also say if you have a Spotify account and you're just using it for music, but you watch a lot of YouTube, it may be better to get a YouTube account because you kind of get this free music, and it's a drawn out kind of music base. What they have, it's almost as good as Spotify. And I know Spotify put a lot of time and money into their podcast, but YouTube already has a relationship with a lot of these creators. So man, the YouTube model is just so versatile to cut into a portion of Netflix profits or a portion of Netflix models, as well as Spotify, as well as movie studios. So YouTube's future is looking really spectacular, just their versatility and their ability to pivot and to dig into other markets and other competitors.
And Rafa does have a few comments. So Rafa first says, I love the chocolate spheres from Tim Hortons, those that are the center of the donut. So those are Timbits. And they started marketing them as if they were the center of the donut, but now eventually, I mean, they do use some of the scrap dough, but they make them like separately from when they make the donut. But yes, in Canada, those are like a huge thing. And I mean, anytime you go to some sort of meeting or there's some sort of event, wherever your workplace is, someone will get Timbits. Rafa also says, The Longest Yard is the only movie I like from that guy.
Oh, Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always, that's why I say Adam Sandler's movies are really good for streaming because they're never spectacularly great other than Uncut Gems and Hustle, which are dramatic roles, which aren't his traditional roles. I say they're okay movies. They're solid movies. They're just comedy movies. They're not going to do spectacular in a box office because they're not spectacular movies, but they will do very well on streaming.
When I was younger, I do remember 50 First Dates was very big for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing with him is he doesn't get overly political in his movies, so he's going to appeal to both audiences, whether it's the left or the right. He's very well known internationally. His face on the movie alone is going to get enough attention to it. And then if you can make an okay movie on top of that, people will view it on streaming. They won't go to the theater to necessarily watch it unless it is a really good movie. So Adam Sandler is perfect for a streaming contract with Netflix. And that's kind of what they have him in. And I expect them to renew his contract because I think it's been successful for both parties here.
Rafa also says, I have YouTube Premium and I love it. And yes, it's included in YouTube Music. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was debating so hard. Do I want to get you? This was years and years ago. I've had YouTube Premium for a long time now. But when I started working massive hours and I was just listening to content, the ability to download it and listen to it without commercials really helped the day go a lot faster.
Without ads, yeah.
Yeah.
And Rafael says, Cobra Kai was the only good original content from YouTube Red. That's why I signed up. And yeah, we actually discussed that, how Cobra Kai came up through YouTube.
Yeah, and the original YouTube Red model, I don't think was the best model. They were paying content, or they were paying documentary makers, filmmakers, a lot of money to try to make originals. I don't think that was the way to go. I think pick a niche like documentaries, which are fairly cheap to make, which you already have access to the content creators. Start dominating that market. You can pay these content creators individually, but you don't have to overpay them because YouTube content transferred over to a documentary format, it would be fairly cheap to do. From there, you go into kids content, which is also very cheap to make. And YouTube there's a lot of good kids creators coming up in that space. So to transition them over to the YouTube Red model, but a different YouTube Red model will work very well.
Should we read a little bit about Spotify? Because we just kind of went into it.
Oh yeah, let's go into it a little bit. And I definitely see Spotify is going to lose market share over time. Like especially with YouTube coming into the space. Other streaming services have like Jay-Z's
Tidal.
Yeah. Was it Tidal? Tidal was trying to come in there. YouTube really had a monopoly on it and they lost money in order to dominate the market. But now services like YouTube don't necessarily have to compete directly with Spotify. They can start dominating the space over time or cutting off market share over time because they have different market shares in order to make revenue, which makes them far more versatile when they're competing with a big competitor like Spotify. Okay, let's
So
read it.
Spotify reported solid gains in paid subscribers and overall users for the second quarter of 2025, but the streamer came up short of its revenue target and posted a net loss for the period. Spotify's stock price was down more than 10% in morning trading Tuesday after earnings release. The company highlighted the positives. In the first half of 2025, subscriber net additions grew more than 30% compared with the first half of 2024, according to Spotify. The quarter also marked the company's second quarter for monthly active user net additions.
Yeah, and another big problem with Spotify is the podcasting. The podcasting is kind of what is the realm they wanted to dominate in, make original content in. They've kind of done that, and it's going to be their Achilles heel. Why? Because as YouTube starts coming in here and giving free memberships to their music premium, a lot of people are going to listen to podcasts.
I think that's always been that way. I just didn't notice.
Yeah, but the fact that YouTube is going to start cutting into their podcast, what's the difference between a Spotify podcast and a YouTube podcast? You're going to be able to know if it's AI or not a lot easier on YouTube. What do I mean by that? If you know AI podcasting, it's very easy to make an AI podcast, and it's kind of hard to differentiate if it's real or AI at this point. In Spotify, you're only getting to listen to it. That's what makes it extremely hard. But with YouTube, you can kind of verify it by sometimes listening to it on audio, but then going to the visual to see if are these real humans? Is it not?
Well, Spotify did integrate video when Joe Rogan came on, and at first they released video for only a few creators, but I believe now it's mostly open to all creators. At least if you have X number of users per month, you're able to upload video as well. And there's other podcasting services, but I mean, let's be real. I believe the dominant one is YouTube, and then Apple, and then Spotify. But because they got Joe Rogan at the beginning and they bet big on that, and now they don't have him anymore. The services, I think, it's just mostly what UI people like, what user experience they like.
Well, yeah, and it's just going to be easier to trust YouTube where you don't have to have a certain number of subscribers to have video. Video is an afterthought with Spotify, and it's going to be really hard for them to kind of go into that video market competing against YouTube, where it's very easy for YouTube to go into Spotify's market and go into audio. We're already seeing that with this quarterly report. I'm expecting next year to see a big drop off with Spotify. Okay, let's go into this next one. It's kind of amongst the same vein with YouTube, I guess.
From The Hollywood Reporter, crying about it. As TV collapses, digital firebrands are suddenly in demand. From Dave Portnoy to Pat McAfee to Brett Cooper, America's most contrarian podcast voices are finding new reach all over legacy media.
Okay, and yeah, we've talked about this. I think Spotify is the new testing ground for the next generation of really content, not just content creation. Huh?
Spotify or
oh, sorry, YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused between the two. Yeah, YouTube is really where the next generation of not only superstars, but content creators, newscasters, producers, directors are really going to come from. And because YouTube already has that relationship with all these people, they're going to have first dibs on them. Let's go a little bit into this article.
Earlier this summer, Fox Sports CEO Eric Shanks jetted into Nantucket for a big 3-hour meeting that would reshape the lineup of Fox Sports.
Yeah, in one moment. Right now, so far, we're seeing Brett Cooper go over to Fox News and other news creators go over into the news business and getting big contracts. But sports, man, the sports commentators in YouTube have huge followings, and it would be perfect for places like Fox News to pick up content creators from YouTube.
So yes, here they're just talking about Barstool Sports and Portnoy's enterprise, but
and yeah,
I hate how they start with a story. Just tell me what the news is and then go into the story.
Well, also Dave Portnoy is kind of in this thing with Barstool Sports, where it can go on mainstream broadcast TV as well as YouTube. So you're seeing this transition of not just content creators going back and forth with these contracts, but more and more broadcast TV is looking more like YouTube, especially like MTV, different sports shows, things like this.
So the world of media has changed and authenticity rules. Being outspoken is even better with a cord cutting wrecking with cord and cord with oh my god. And with cord cutting wrecking havoc on TV viewing, traditional TV players that used to develop their talent in-house are increasingly turning to outsiders to help give them relevance to an audience that might otherwise bypass their content. Dave has built a one-of-a-kind brand that connects with a new generation of fans, authentic, bold, and original, said Shanks in a statement.
Yeah, in one moment, what we used to see is the places like these late shows on TV. They would look for actors. If they could act fairly well, they would put them on there, and they would think that would do good. A much better model is going to YouTube. You get to see a broad work of like authentic work to see if the audience really connects with the person. You can see their followers, you can see their interactions, you can see what kind of audience they pull from. And once you sign them to a TV deal, whether it's with Fox Sports, Fox News, CNN, anything like that, you can allow them to keep their independent platform. So it will be a co-promotion where the independent platform kind of promotes Fox News or whatever contract they're in, and their mainstream platform like Fox News would promote them their independent platform, which is interesting.
Then it continues, but there are signs that TV news is the next frontier. Brett Cooper, a popular YouTube creator who blends entertainment and cultural commentary with conservative values, was signed as an on-air contributor to Fox News. And they said Brett does that through her cause, which is culture, and the way she does it is also unique. Through thoughtful discussion and persuasion, she is also a very direct person. She's consistent with what she says and what she's doing in her own life. She's the same person on screen as she is in person. That kind of authenticity appeals to people of all ages.
Yeah, and let's pause it here for a second because the next article we're not going to go into yet, but it has to do a lot with authenticity, market share. Even the power of nations are going to be really developed through free speech and content creators. A matter of fact,
and also this is very interesting because it says here towards the bottom, and Skydance has held conversations with Barry Weiss, whom I don't fully support, but she's interesting and she's done a lot for the space, about possibly acquiring her free press, perhaps bringing the outspoken former New York Times columnist into the CBS news fold when it takes over Paramount in a bid to expand its digital footprint or maybe to comply with promises made to the FCC. So it is interesting that, I mean, she basically was taken out of the New York Times.
And people like Pierce Morgan had network shows, kind of got canceled or pushed to the side and went online dominating that space. Now he's going to be highly sought after by broadcasters again. And we're only seeing the beginning. If YouTube recognizes the power they have, not necessarily by having all their content creators in contracts, because they don't, but having these relationships, really harnessing these relationships, they're going to have first dibs at all these directors, all these content creators, all these sound people, all these actors. YouTube is really in a very special space, dominating the market that they do dominate. It gives them a lot of future market share, whether it's in movie theaters, whether it's in movies, if they buy a movie studio. I really see movie theaters being eaten up in the future by studios and places like YouTube that are really going to try to monopolize the entire revenue share.
But also, unfortunately, for a lot of, let's just say, mainstream media, a lot of these content creators from YouTube and a lot of people that created independent media and independent enterprises are not on the left. So as of right now, but a lot of these people that were mentioned and the way that the space kind of got its start was by people being pushed out of the mainstream media because of their quote-unquote controversial views, and then having to start their own thing on YouTube and or their own enterprise like the Daily Wire. So it's interesting now that we see the mainstream media that so hated on them so much now crawling back towards them as well.
Well, yeah, and we've kind of brought it from, let's see the stories that we kind of had here, kind of like Spotify, independent content creators, to businesses, to corporations with studios, YouTube, that battle. But now we're going to kind of bring it into a governmental level. And this has YouTube and the content creation space is basically the cultural space. And it's going to have a major impact on what countries kind of dominate in the cultural space. Let's go into the next article, actually.
From the Hollywood Reporter as well, European creators slam AI implementation. warned copyright protections are failing. Europe's writers, actors, musicians, and producers accuse the EU of selling out creative industries in favor of Gen AI giants and demand urgent reforms to safeguard IP rights.
Yeah, and it's not just this, but it has a lot to do with this Digital ID Act, the censorship acts they're bringing into the EU right now. That's going to severely hurt their content creators within the EU. It's going to give them less reach and less appeal overall. Countries that have good free speech laws like the United States, their content creators are going to have a much broader market. Even on some of those things that are going to be censored within the EU for those specific topics. In other topics, they're not going to be censored. So they're going to have a much broader and larger subscriber base, a much larger view count. So when they don't talk about censored issues within those countries, they're going to have a lot of sway over those populations, and those populations will seek out banned content from those content creators. And there's always going to be a way, whether it's a VPN or some new technology that kind of comes up. So the European Union, by censoring not only these platforms, but these content creators and their own citizens, are really going to hinder their cultural reach on a global level. And places like the United States that have strong free speech laws that are implemented through the Constitution, this is going to really benefit the content creators within that country, and then in turn really benefit the country itself. Okay, let's go in a little bit into the article. And kind of what I just said is a little bit different than what the article is kind of talking about here, but I can see the add-on effects through digital ID and censorship. It's going to really hurt countries' cultural pull in the long term.
So, a broad coalition of groups representing European writers, performers, producers, and publishers issued a joint statement on Wednesday warning that Europe's AI Act is not properly protecting copyrights. In a joint statement, groups, including those representing European actors, writers, journalists, film producers, musicians, translators, and visual artists, took aim at the implementation of the Act, which was passed last year and hailed as the world's first and most far-reaching government regulation of artificial intelligence technology.
Yeah, the European Union's solution is always regulate. It's like, and the more they regulate, the more problems they're going to come up with themselves. And the more they regulate, the more they start defining IP, the more they start regulating speech, the more they're going to hinder their cultural reach. The United States simply implements free speech, and this has add-on effect, and it's going to really increase the reach, not just of the country, but the content creators within that country. The United States in the last generation really had the biggest cultural reach. And because of that, those free speech laws, as long as they protect them going forward, they're going to have the most cultural reach going forward in this new generation. Also, platforms like YouTube, really favoring human content creators as of late, I think is going to be a big add-on effect and a big bonus for US-based platforms.
Under the Act from August 2nd of this year, providers of general-purpose AI models, GPAI, such as ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and DALL-E, have to comply with European copyright law in their use of copyright-protected materials in training their AI systems and provide fair and appropriate remuneration for copyright owners. Right holder groups were consulted throughout the drafting of the AI Act, but say that now the way the law is being implemented does not sufficiently protect artists and puts Europe's creative industries at risk. The final outcomes fail to address the core concerns, which are sectors and the millions of creators and companies active in Europe, which we represent.
And let's stop it there for a second. Now, and I do understand this argument. And without actors like China or Russia in the AI space, you could implement things like this amongst the entire Western base of countries such as the US, Canada, but you're going to have them all implement similar laws. If one country doesn't, they're going to have a major competitive advantage when training their AIs, and their AIs will begin to dominate these spaces. So like in the beginning, I don't know, if the US or the West can kind of dominate the AI space above China, then they can start implementing laws like this. But when you're in a competitive space directly against China that isn't hindering the training of their AI, you may lose the AI war itself.
Yes. And now somebody else losing the war and trying to walk back statements that were maybe made From Variety, Pedro Pascal downplays Reed Richards becoming the new leader of the Avengers in Doomsday. That's a little bit of a mislead, according to him. So Marvel probably told him to shut up about it and themselves to shut up about it after they're seeing the results and the backlash that Pedro is getting.
Oh, because that's a different, they changed the headline here.
Oh.
This was from a day ago. So the original headline was Pedro Pascal claims Reed Richards will not be the leader of the Avengers Doomsday. It didn't have that add-on sentence yesterday. I kind of brought this in, and when I searched for the articles, I just put the first sentence, search it, and it's usually Variety or one of the other sources I go to. So they added that in now. Now I'm interested to see if they actually changed the article as well. I didn't read the whole article to begin with, but I just assumed, and my original comments on this or bullet points were good for Disney for getting ahead of this. Good. Somebody at Disney told Pedro Pascal to obviously say this. He was supposed to be the leader of the Avengers in the first place, but Disney is getting the hint, but maybe they're not.
Well, he says they just downplay it. Pedro Pascal is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, but he is not the new leader of the Avengers. At least that's what the actor says, for now. An interview with Fantastic Four First Steps director Matt Shakman gave to Variety earlier this month went viral for seemingly revealing that Pascal's superhero would be going on to lead the Avengers. It wasn't a far-fetched possibility for fans, as Pascal and his Fantastic Four co-stars Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Ebon Moss-Bachrach are all returning for the next year's Avengers Doomsday. And yes, it became viral, but because people were saying, no, please, God, no, don't make him the lead.
Yeah, now this is going to start to become a controversy, especially if they're re-rating headlines already this early on. I had already reported on this 2 or 3 times that this was a bad move, or this was a talking point when when Fantastic Four came up, that Pascal was supposed to be the leader of the Avengers, how this is a bad idea. Independent media is kind of all over this as a talking point. I thought maybe they got the hint, but obviously they haven't, because they're still considering him to make him the lead.
Well, I think this article is trying to play out both sides. It's saying, well, he's saying no, but then the director kind of said yes, maybe.
If they're trying to play both sides, I think at one point he was supposed to be the leader of the Avengers.
Yes.
And now they're trying to figure out, we need to kind of backtrack on this. I don't know. The amount of negative press they're already getting from this when there is no other talk about the Avengers is pretty massive right now.
Because he cannot fill the shoes of Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, let's be frank. And he said, it's big news to me, that's for one, Pascal said. I think Matt Shakman was doing an interview, and when he was speaking about Reed, there is something that happens in the comics where he is sort of drawn in by the Avengers family and asked to be put in a leadership position. That is something that happens in the comics. It isn't necessarily something that my character's future entails. And then Pascal stressed, and being honest in that, I'm not even trying to avoid spoilers. It's a bit of a mislead. So he's trying to downplay it pretty hard and saying like, oh, well, it happened in the comics, but I don't think they're going to put me in the lead because somebody probably told him to shut up about it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. Let's go into the next article. There's obviously going to be more news on this. The fact that they're rewriting headlines already.
From Cosmic Book News, Marvel XX says Disney ruined the MCU, backs James Gunn.
Yeah, and this kind of happened at a Comic-Con, and there was a little bit of a debate on stage. That being said, James Gunn, they're trying to back James Gunn as he made this great Superman movie. It wasn't extremely great. It was above average, yes, better than what Marvel's executives have kind of been putting out and Disney executives have been putting out. But to say James Gunn is going to be the savior, or they should put him up and...
Well, no, I think they're saying he was right with the comments he had made about Marvel previously, but when he got axed, he got fired from it.
Let's read it a little bit.
At Comic-Con, I overheard a heated discussion between a former Marvel executive and a prominent Hollywood VFX artist. The two were in full agreement. The blame for the MCU's current problems lies squarely with Disney, not the creatives or execs that were already at Marvel. While I didn't catch every detail, they were pretty livid about Disney ruining the MCU, and the takeaway was clear, that they backed James Gunn's recent comments that Disney corporate is to blame for the issues with the MCU. And then there's some additional.
Yeah, you were right.
To be told. Yes, I know.
Yes, I know. That being said, I think they either need to give comic book movies a break for a little while and then come back strong, or they're going to have to pull from other genres, much like they did with the Joker when they emulated Taxi Driver, which was a successful kind of a transition. You need new storylines, new plot lines. You can't have these cookie cutter and same story arcs every single time. You can see the story beats as you're watching the movie. You know what's coming next. You know how it's going to end. Very rarely is there a good twist. Even if there is a good twist, people are not going to watch it. Even when an okay movie like Thunderbolts or Ballerina is made, people aren't even going to watch these IPs anymore.
Trying to avoid the ads, but Gunn blames Disney for Marvel's decline. In a recent Rolling Stone interview, James Gunn addressed the decline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he didn't hold back. He said Disney's push for more content, especially during the streaming boom, stretched Marvel beyond its limits. And longtime Marvel executive producer Louis D'Esposito said that privately to me, that wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and it killed them, said Gunn.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting as they put out more and more content. Are they going to get more bland? Meaning, as AI takes more of a role in Hollywood, they're going to be able to output content a lot faster. But are the creatives going to be able to keep up? At this point, the creatives aren't even able to keep up. They're using the same storylines, the same beats every time. So AI could, help out on the front end with special effects and things of this nature, but you still need that creative storyline and things like this, which they're already kind of lacking in Hollywood.
And then Gunn continued on, or Gunn clarifies.
That's kind of good for this. Let's go into Eddie Murphy next.
From Deadline, Eddie Murphy confirms he's playing Inspector Clouseau in a new Pink Panther movie.
Yeah, I didn't really like the first Pink Panther movie. I don't think Pink Panther has a major following with the younger generation. A lot of people are calling this a blatant race swap, which I think maybe it is, but I think Eddie Murphy is so beloved and he's done so well on children's movies that this could be a good casting, actually.
Yes, and because he's such a well-known actor and beloved actor, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
When they're putting in competent people, it doesn't matter what color they are.
Yeah, and actually when I first heard of this, I didn't think anything of a race swap. I just thought, that's a good casting for Eddie Murphy with the Pink Panther. But the amount in the independent media, they're calling this a race swap. I think they're looking too far into it. Sometimes you can race swap and it's absolutely fine. In historic roles, I would say, no, this isn't necessarily a normal historic figure.
Yes.
Also, we were talking a lot about Coyote versus Acme the other day. Was that the name of the movie? Coyote versus Acme with a live action where they're going to put 2D animation. I'm almost expecting this to be 2D animation as well. Both of those, whether it's Acme or the Pink Panther, I don't know if they're going to have a new generation fan base to really go to the theaters to watch this. They're obviously going to have an older generation, but it's best for animated movies if they can hit both generations, draw from two major audiences, and that will pack theaters. So we'll have to see if Acme and Pink Panther does well. I think Acme or Coyote versus Acme would do a lot better than Pink Panther, but Eddie Murphy is a really big name and he could draw people into the theater for Pink Panther.
But then with this as well, and the Coyote versus Acme and all the movies that they're doing either live action or just reviving franchises, it's still sad to see we're stuck in this loop of almost no original content. Everything is just harkening back to back in the days, blah, blah, blah. But when all of these first came out, they were original content, and I don't see the industry being able to do the same at all now. They're just relying on content.
Yeah, and I think movies like Pink Panther and Acme versus Coyote, they're looking at the video game industry, and those IPs going from video games to movies are doing extremely well, but that's because they have two major built-in fan bases there. They have, so they can really draw a lot more people into the theaters. I'm not sure if necessarily this is going to do well. If these two movies do well, then a lot of older IPs are going to start coming out that were 2D cartoons and turning them into live action. Sonic did well, Nintendo did well, video game IPs are doing well, and I can see how studio executives are thinking, well, this is similar enough, we'll try it, but I don't think they have the big, large fan bases to draw from like video game IPs. They have the cartoons that they're drawing from, like the Mario, Sonic cartoons, plus the video game fan base. So they're naturally going to do well when they go to theaters, I would think.
I'm trying to think, in this genre, when was the last time any original IP, not based on a book, not based on a video game, not based on anything, came out or did well? And I can't think of any that is not based on something else.
Oh, like a cartoon?
Not just cartoons, but like superheroes, anything that's not, drama or historical or a period movie.
Sinners. I did like Sinners.
But is it based on a novel or graphic novel?
No, it was original. And that's the thing, but a lot of people are...
But that's just PG. That's for adults. It's not like
Yeah, but a lot of people are
audience.
kind of pointing to that. And as soon as you do have something that's successful, they try to overdo it. They're already trying to get him to make part 2 and 3, which is crazy. And he said it was supposed to be a standalone movie. So
that's horror. So I'm trying to think like more superheroes and stuff, and I can't think of any.
yeah, and this is why I think in the age of AI, as it comes up, I think independent content creators on YouTube are really going to utilize it in a big way to have proof of concept and go into animation and other things which were really time intensive projects. It really cuts the time down, and it really allows them to show their creative script writing and their creative ideas. And I think studios are going to come in, and YouTube creators really sign YouTube creators' ideas to contracts and things like this. So I think AI will create new IPs, not because of the studios creating IPs, but because the YouTube creators are going to create new ideas that the studios are then going to come in and purchase. Okay, let's go into the next story here.
From Deadline, BBC resolved nearly 300 employment disputes using settlement deals.
Yeah, and they decided to pay these people rather than have a bunch of headlines. They've already had a ton of negative headlines going into the press with SA allegations and things of this nature. And this was widespread within the BBC in a lot of different types of lawsuits. So they just came in and said, let's just settle them now. This is probably a good move by them. The amount of bad headlines they were already getting were kind of hurting them. Let's read a little bit about it, though. And this is going to go into the next story as well. So this is kind of going to be a continuing theme.
The BBC has revealed that it signed nearly 300 settlement deals with staffers over the past decade to stop disputes escalating from an employment tribunal. In response to a Freedom of Information Act request, the British national broadcaster disclosed that 291 settlement agreements were signed between 2014 and 2024. The BBC said that since 2013, the agreements have not contained so-called gagging clauses, which prevent former employees from making disparaging or derogatory statements about the corporation. In 2018, the BBC also removed clauses from settlement deals that stopped individuals from discussing the agreement or the circumstances of their departure.
Yeah, and I kind of had a little bit of a different take on this. I've been noticing something as of late. They were going after free speech on a global basis through hate speech and through misogyny laws. We've seen this in Mexico, Canada, the EU, the UK, that don't have firm free speech implemented in their constitution. They're able to implement these hate speech laws and then put guardrails on what's acceptable speech. That being said, what we're seeing, the new attack on free speech is really lawfare. And that's not only in this article, but they're going after corporations like the BBC, like other independent news agencies, broadcasters, things like this, to try to put guardrails on what's okay to broadcast. And then they're also going after independent content creators through lawfare, through lawsuits. They went after Alex Jones. They're going after Candace Owens. They went after Trump. Trump went after them. So lawfare and the, what do you call it when you go after somebody with a lawsuit that's not...
defamation?
No. Okay.
I don't know what you're looking for.
Let's go into the next article here, though, because it kind of relates to this. Maybe I'll think about what I was trying to say while we read this.
From Reuters, Trump says Wall Street Journal Murdoch wants to settle a defamation lawsuit.
Yeah, and when Murdoch owns Fox News as well as the Wall Street Journal, he owns a ton of them. So going after Murdoch and of what's acceptable speech, not acceptable speech, is kind of putting guardrails on the American mainstream media. We have to remember they went after him for something Tucker Carlson said, and that lawsuit ended up in a $787.5 million settlement. They went after Alex Jones for $1 billion settlement. Trump is now going after, he went after 60 Minutes. He's now going after the Wall Street Journal. So both the left and right through lawfare are really creating this new type of censorship of what's going to be acceptable to say, not be acceptable to say. So it's very interesting. And I think lawfare is going to really put the guardrails on speech now. Okay, let's read a little bit into this.
Donald Trump said on Tuesday that the Wall Street Journal and its billionaire owner Rupert Murdoch want to settle the U.S. president's defamation lawsuit against the newspaper. On July 18, Trump sued the Journal and its owners, including Murdoch, over a story which said Trump's name was on a birthday greeting for the late...
Oh, that's what I was trying to remember to say. These aren't criminal cases, these are civil cases. So they're really trying to hamstring free speech through civil cases in most Western countries. Now, I see this as being the new way rather than using hate speech laws that people are really rebelling against. And there's a lot of talk online and movements online to go against governments that are directly implementing laws through hate speech and misogyny. But when it's done through civil cases and big settlements that can absolutely bankrupt independent content creators and mainstream media organizations like the Wall Street Journal, it really does start to put guardrails on what's acceptable to say, not acceptable to say. And there's no real pushback yet. People haven't really noticed that this civil lawfare is really being implemented on a broad scale, both the left and the right, and it's starting to hinder what people think is acceptable to say. Okay, we can read a little bit more of this, and then we'll go into Trump and the EPA.
So he said, I've been treated badly by the Wall Street Journal. I would have assumed that Rupert Murdoch controls it, but, maybe does, maybe doesn't. Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One. They're talking to us about doing something, but we'll see what happens. Maybe they would like us to drop that, so we'll see. Yeah, they want to settle it, he said.
Yeah, and I do like Trump, and I do think the mainstream media was hard on him, so I think there is justification here, but I do see this broader context because I do a political show at night and pop culture. Free speech is constantly coming up. And the vector of attack before was hate speech laws and misogyny laws, and now it's lawfare from both the left and the right. So I don't know. Okay, let's keep going into the next article here.
From ABC News, with AI plan, Trump keeps chipping away at foundational environmental law. When big infrastructure projects spring up, one crucial law, the National Environmental Policy Act, has for decades been a key way the government has required powerful industry interests to consider the environment and the public's voice.
Okay, let's take this with a huge grain of salt. Not just a grain of salt. I'm going to pick apart this article here. In order to compete in the age of AI, they're going to need massive amounts of energy. And so the EPA regulations are going to be having to be taken down. And that's not me versus the EPA. This is China and Russia using the EPA as a weapon for the past decade. What do I mean by this? Even before the age of AI, China was making massive investments as well as Russia into NGOs and environmental organizations who would then pay lobbyists to lobby the EPA, the government, and legislators to implement laws through the EPA in order to hamstring the United States from exploiting their mass natural wealth in oil and natural gas as well as nuclear. There's all kinds of laws preventing the U.S. from creating nuclear facilities, extracting their own oil and natural gas. And why was this done? Before AI, this was done to kind of hamstring the United States from having the growth that they normally would. This happened in Canada as well. They couldn't progress at the same rate that both China and Russia were because the major input on growing a society or growing a country is energy. The energy inputs will dictate how fast the country can grow. That's number one. But number two, it also helped them control the energy markets, meaning Russia had major motivations to hamstring the price of energy, to hamstring their major competitor, which would have been the U.S. The U.S. actually has more natural gas and oil resources than any other country in the world, especially because they have Alaska, but they're unable to tap into these because of the EPA and the legislation that has been put in. That being said, now that AI has become a factor and whoever wins the AI war is going to really be the next superpower, they really have to start taking down these EPA regulations. I think when China and Russia came in with these NGOs to implement EPA laws, they were doing it to hamstring the energy sector within the US. The energy sector is crucially important now that AI is going to be the next space of competition. Okay, let's go a little bit into this article.
When President Donald Trump rolled out a plan to boost artificial intelligence and data centers, a key goal was wiping away barriers to rapid growth. That meant taking aim at the National Environmental Policy Act, a 55-year-old bedrock law aimed at protecting the environment through a process that requires agencies to consider a project's possible impacts and allows the public to be heard before a project is approved.
This could take projects like nuclear power plants 20 years before they're made, 10 years. I see something similar that was happening in Canada and a lot of different industries. They put so much legislation and so many hoops you have to jump through just for like a real estate project. It could take 5 years just to get the permits. It's something similar here in the energy industry within the United States. And how did all these laws get passed? They were financed by foreign governments, so to hamstring the United States government.
Data centers demanding vast amounts of energy, water have aroused strong opposition in some communities. The AI action plan Trump announced last week would seek to sweep aside an EPA, as it's commonly known, to streamline environmental reviews and permitting for data centers and related infrastructure. Republicans...
And I think the EPA and its foundation was fine, and it was protecting a lot of things, but at a certain point it did get weaponized by foreign governments, and it was their major leverage in order to hamstring the growth of the American economy. Well, they built up their own economy. Trump realizes this, and economically, as he takes down these EPA regulations, the United States is going to be able to dominate in not only the AI sector, but the energy sector. We just seen the $650 billion energy contract he signed with the EU alone. This is going to, the United States can't even provide that much energy and that many tankers right now. So, but the fact that he has those contracts already lined up, that sends a message to all the oil and gas companies within the United States: drill, baby, drill.
And
start making nuclear facilities as well.
And also, I mean, all of this hamstringing of the U.S., being able to move forward and continue with production because of the regulations, allowed other countries to also pollute a lot more. China, Russia, India, they didn't have the same restrictions. And, I mean, is it a fair ground?
It's dirty oil, dirty coal, dirty energy, and they're selling that dirty energy to the world. It costs a lot more to drill for oil or start new projects in the United States because of these regulations. So there's no way they can compete on an international level. It's been hamstringing them for a decade, but it came to a head with AI. I actually had this theory over a year ago, and as soon as I seen the amount of power AI took, I said these regulations are coming down. There is no way if the United States wants to compete. And that's exactly what's happening a year later. I had other people try to tell me that green energy could supply the energy they needed for these AI data centers. And they just hadn't looked into it. You literally need nuclear facilities for AI data centers.
So a spokeswoman for the White House Council on Environmental Quality said the administration is focused on driving meaningful EPA reform to reduce the delays in federal permitting, unleashing the ability for America to strengthen its AI and manufacturing leadership. And then someone else said...
Oh, yeah. And again, as these AI centers need nuclear power, this puts a premium on the transitional energies, which is... natural gas and oil for manufacturing. If you want to be a manufacturing superpower, which it looks like the United States is starting that transition with all these tariff deals, we're going to go into it in a minute with Stellantis. It looks like major manufacturing is not only starting to move, but the investments and the checks are starting to be cut to start these manufacturing facilities. But these manufacturing facilities are going to need cheap energy.
And someone else said, it's par for the course for this administration. The attitude is to clear the way for projects that harm communities and the environment, said Erin Doran, senior staff attorney at environmental nonprofit Food and Water Watch. which I'd love to know where their funding is coming from. And EPA is a foundational environmental law in the United States, essentially our Magna Carta for the environment, said Wendy Park, a senior attorney. Why is it always women?
Yeah, and I just want to make this extremely clear. This was one of the major vectors of attack for the Chinese government to hamstring their major competitor, which was the US, in the energy sector, in the AI sector, and other sectors that are related to energy, such as manufacturing. That's why these have to come down. And I know a lot of progressives, they bought into this propaganda. There was a lot of propaganda going on with this Chinese investment to bring these laws in about green energy and things of this nature. Green energy can be good in certain use cases, but if you want to become a manufacturing superpower and an AI superpower, you're going to need massive amounts of energy. Also, a lot of countries have signed massive contracts with the US for oil and natural gas. They're going to have to start drilling now. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into the next story, which is related to this.
From the AP, Trump EPA moves to repeal landmark endangerment finding that allows climate regulation.
Okay, let's read a little bit into this.
President Donald Trump's administration on Tuesday proposed revoking a scientific finding that has long been the central basis for U.S. action to regulate greenhouse gas emissions and fight climate change. The proposed Environmental Protection Agency rule would rescind a 2009 declaration that determined that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare. The endangerment finding is the legal underpinning of a host of climate regulations under the Clean Air Act for motor vehicles, power plants, and other pollution resources that are heating the planet.
Yeah, and this is very interesting. As Donald Trump comes in, defunds the USAID, a lot of that money was going into one-sided scientific research for this climate hoax that was going on. And they say 99% of scientists agree. Well, 99% of scientists didn't agree. We kind of went into the studies that kind of said that. All these other scientists are now being brought to the surface where there is an actual debate going on. And there is science that actually debates whether we were supposed to be in an ice age right now or not. And maybe the heat that we're putting into the atmosphere wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Okay, let's go.
And Rafa says, not only women, Nat, gays too. When I said that, because all the lawyers they interviewed were women. And it's a lot of women that I see at these marches. And
gay minority women too.
Especially a lot of older women who from the 60s, 70s, etc. kind of have continued to buy all of also the population collapse, which I've made 2 videos, one in English, one in Spanish about, and the propaganda that came from the population boom that has been disproven widely now.
Yeah, and I'm not against the environment. And I think when the EPA was created back in the 70s, these were actually real concerns, and the EPA was doing actual good. The problem is at a certain point, as China started to grow, they realized they could weaponize the EPA against the government. This has been going on for well over a decade now, and it's not just China, it's also Russia that is competing within the energy space. What happened is they not only financed and weaponized the EPA against the US government, they had massive propaganda through these NGOs for all this green energy, green sector propaganda, and they targeted it at these people from the 70s, these older women that were very pro-environmentalist. The environment was used and weaponized against the US government to hamstring themselves.
But also the EPA, I mean, they've turned a blind eye to other things where other industries are concerned, like the whole Teflon scandal, where it took them ages to try to defend the environment from the dangerous chemicals that were ending cows and a lot of farming in the United States as well. And they turned a blind eye to it for years. So, I mean...
Yeah, and
they pick and choose.
It kind of just needs to be defunded and restructured, much like he's trying to do with the education sector and things of this nature, so that the agency itself, being the EPA, can't be weaponized against the U.S. government in order to hamstring them in their competition against other global superpowers, especially right now when China and the United States are neck and neck in so many sectors like AI.
And we also know, I mean, yes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is into health right now, but let's not forget he was an environmental lawyer for who knows how many years before he's also started finding all the things with health. So, I mean, I'm sure he at least knows about this. Maybe he'll be asked about this as well.
Yeah, food, water, and air need to be protected, but you also need to be able to drill for energy and make nuclear power plants for your country. And when there are no regulations on these other countries, and these other countries are saying, oh, we're the most green because we have more solar panels and more wind turbines than any other country, that being China. Well, what they don't say is they're mass manufacturing coal plants and things and dirty energy at the same time.
There are people who, in the name of climate change, are willing to bankrupt the country, Zeldin said on the Conservative Ruthless podcast. They created this endangerment finding, and then they were able to put all these regulations on vehicles, on airplanes, on stationary sources to basically regulate out of existence, in many cases, a lot of segments of our economy.
Well,
and
we
cost
see this,
Americans a lot of money.
And we see this happening in Canada right now. They're trying to regulate cars out of existence. People in Canada won't have cars in 20 years if they keep it up. They're completely started today. This year's the first year they're going to put regulations on gas and oil, gas-powered vehicles, so you can't start buying them anymore. By 2035, there will be no gas-powered vehicles sold in Canada if they keep along the same lines. Once that happens, then you say, oh, well, that's a good thing. They'll all be electric. The problem is they don't have any electrical infrastructure, and the research has already been done. If they implement a complete electrical infrastructure to replace all gas-powered vehicles with electric-powered vehicles, they don't have enough power in the country to even supply that.
And where do you think this power is coming from? At least some of it, especially in the US, Canada, kind of as well, is also coming from, the dangerous sources that they were trying to avoid in the first place with the emissions regulations. And in Canada specifically, it's a terrible place to do all electric because electric is not at the point where it can withstand a lot of the freezing temperatures that happened, most of the months in Canada throughout the year.
Well, it needs to be diversified. Like Canada is saying, we're going all electric, blah, blah, blah. You need gas, you need oil, you need green energy, and you need nuclear. Nuclear has to be the foundation, but it takes the longest to build. So you need transitional energy such as oil and natural gas. What's green energy good for? Green energy is good for individuals and individual households. If there's a war or the electrical grid breaks down, but you have solar panel on your roofs, you still have access to electricity. That's what I see green energy being good for. I don't think green energy is good for manufacturing or a lot of other industries that need massive amounts of power, but it is absolutely fantastic for individual citizens to have individual freedom when it comes to their electrical needs. So they can't be controlled by the government. Okay, let's go into the last
Speaking
article
of
here.
cars, from the AP, Stellantis CEO targets U.S. turnaround as carmaker faces $1.7 billion hit from tariffs this year.
Yeah, and this is an absolute great thing. We just seen the EU and their tariff deal with the United States, which was absolutely huge because the EU has 27 countries involved in that. Trump's coming back with major deals now, and the fact that these major tariffs are going to cost $1.7 billion, and now there has to be a cost evaluation put to Stellantis and a lot of these other companies. Is it cheaper to pay the tariffs, or is it cheaper to build a manufacturing facility in the United States? And at this point, I would say, maybe it's still cheaper to pay the tariff, but in a year or two, it's going to be cheaper to build the manufacturing facilities because the United States is starting to build nuclear plants. They're starting to drill. They're starting to have natural gas. So as energy costs come down specifically in the U.S., it's going to be cheaper to manufacture within the U.S. And you're going to see this car manufacturer, Stellantis, definitely go. This is one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world as well. Go back to the U.S. along with the other companies, not just because of the tariffs, but because of the energy policies in the U.S., which we were specifically talking about in the last two articles. As nuclear power plants come online, energy is going to become a lot cheaper within the U.S.
So Stellantis hopes to counteract some of the expected 1.5 billion euro, 1.7 billion cost of tariffs this year by boosting North American profitability with new model launches like the discontinued Jeep Cherokee. Oh God, why are they bringing that back? The car maker's new CEO said on Tuesday. The world's fourth largest car maker, created 4.5 years ago from the merger of Fiat Chrysler and PSA Peugeot, is in talks with the U.S. officials on how to mitigate the impact of tariffs, in particular cars produced in neighboring Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, and let's talk about one more thing. Donald Trump is putting like 50% tariffs on steel, and everybody's talking about, oh, that's going to collapse the economy. He's an idiot. Well, what he's doing with energy right now, with nuclear, natural gas, oil, the amount of drilling contracts that are going out because there have already been $650 billion contracts signed with the EU. The United States is now going to become the primary superpower within the energy sector, and this is going to greatly affect the manufacturing sector.
So, in pursuit of a U.S. turnaround, Filosa, who is the CEO, is relaunching in the new second half of 2025 models that previous management nixed 2 years ago, a new Jeep Cherokee for the largest selling U.S. segment.
I got off track for a second. Yeah, he's putting a 50% tariff on steel, which is very important. He's going to lose money in the short term, but once they actually start mining and getting a lot more steel made in the U.S., they need that for manufacturing. So if they want to have a long-term vision of bringing manufacturing back into the United States, not just to sell products to other countries, but to be a military superpower and a manufacturing superpower, steel is on the absolute base level of needs that they need to do. So the fact that they're succeeding in the energy sector and succeeding with these tariffs, they can afford to lose money in the short term in order to bring steel manufacturing up to par within the U.S.
Yes, so yeah, bringing back the new Jeep Cherokee and a popular ICE Dodge Charger. Stellantis has already absorbed 300 million euros of the 2025 tariff impact during the first half of the year, as the carmaker posted losses of 2.3 billion euros. During the period, U.S. shipments were down by nearly a quarter as the carmaker reduced the importation vehicles produced abroad.
Yeah, and I think this is going to benefit Mexican manufacturing as well. Why? Because Mexico's not going to put a tariff on U.S. energy or U.S. steel, so they're going to be able to once the steel industry is up and running and the energy sector is up and running in the States and it's cheap energy, all those base materials are going to come into Mexico because they have cheaper manufacturing processes down here and lower wages. They're going to get a lot of the add-on manufacturing that the United States either can't or doesn't want to do.
And Rafa says, hope those tariffs on steel decrease prices in Mexico.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term investment in steel. He needs to put massive tariffs on steel right now so that U.S. mining companies start mining for steel and they have massive amounts of steel. They have the steel within the United States. The problem is they have to go mine for it. So he has to take down the regulations, again, through the EPA in order to do this. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think that's it for today. It got very political there with some of the subject matters at the end.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be back later tonight with Nat and the Guy, and Nat has a Spanish show
at 8 p.m. Mexico City time, and also video releasing today on this channel about Meghan Markle, and in the Spanish channel as well. So, and if you haven't watched the Chicharito story in English and you have no idea about censorship in Mexico, you might want to watch that because it's even crazier. I would say that in the U.S. and almost Canada as well, like they're copying the worst ideas from all the other countries.
Well, and if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. We're almost at 300, and eventually, hopefully, we get to 1,000 so we can monetize this channel.
Yes, and Rafa says, see you later, and thank you so much to Rafa for all your comments as well.
Adios. Thank you.